Hello and welcome to the August 7th edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I'm Mike Hogan here again with Eric Wing on my left, Peter Thomas Fornatel in Saratoga. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mike.
How are you guys doing today?
I'm great. It's beautiful weather here in the city. Be beautiful weather up at Saratoga, up there for Whitney Day, down here at the Meadowlands for Hambletonian Day. Just so much good racing right on the heels of last week's Haskell. It's been a great couple of weeks.
Absolutely, and it should even continue with quite a lot of other good races, certainly at Saratoga and also down Southern California too. Pete, you, I'm sure, are going to be all over Saratoga tomorrow, making your presence known both at the Paddock Bar and elsewhere. What's your take on the meet so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, we've really mostly lucked out in terms of weather. We had a couple of blazing hot days, but today was one of those gorgeous Saratoga mornings where you can almost feel a hint of fall in the first thing. Gets down into maybe the high 50s at night, and you keep that just sort of crisp, fresh feeling that the horses love up here. We have projected excellent weather for today. I haven't tempted the fates by looking ahead to tomorrow yet, but I'm hoping it's going to be more of the same. My only complaint, such as it is I haven't really been able to get moving and grooving betting-wise. I've been keeping it light, though, and staying out of trouble. I'm still very much in that area where one big hit puts me out and up and happy. But I have to say, it's not even been like I have a bunch of bad beat stories to recite. I've just been a little off or a little unlucky, and in the end haven't been able to put anything together. But it's a long meet. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and my confidence is still high, and I'm looking forward to this week because not only do we have this great weekend of racing, we've got all the contest players coming in next week, and that's sure to be a lot of fun.
That's right. That's right. You want to maybe we'll start before we dive into the races. We've got 4 stakes races that we're focusing on at Saratoga tomorrow. Before we dive into that one, want to do a little tournament talk?
I think that's a great idea. I definitely want to announce for the first time on the podcast that we have our top 5 from the first half of the NHC Tour. Eric Moomey, last year's overall winner, finished in first place for the first half once again. No surprise there. Bill Sherman, in a little bit of a repeat of history, also made his way into the top 5. The reason it's a repeat of history is that last year he went to Del Mar needing a score in that live event, the only live event he played in the first half, to win the $10,000 bonus. This year he was in the same situation at the Wynn tournament and ended up running second and not only netting the sizable prize money there, but also getting the $10,000 bonus. And then the top 5 are rounded out by 3 other players. Sean Nolan, who's a 10-time NHC qualifier, who I haven't met. Eric, have you met Sean before?
Shoot, Peter, I think I might have met him once, but I might not have also.
He's going to be in Saratoga.
Yeah, keep going.
He's coming to Saratoga this week, so I'll have a chance to meet him and do some writing about him next week. I feel bad that there's a 10-time qualifier that I haven't yet had the chance to interview. And you know what? There's actually a few of them out there. And Tony Kite is a newer player who's also going to be in Saratoga this week, and I look forward to meeting and having the opportunity to speak with and do something for the blog. And one of these days, I got to get back into interviewing these players for the podcast. A lot of people have given some positive feedback about the interviews we've done in the past with contest players, and I definitely don't want to forget about that. At some point, we'll have their voices on here as well, because as fun as it is to read about this stuff in print, it's also great to be able to hear these voices and some of the stories to come from the NHC Tour as well. So I'm leaving somebody out here. Hang on a second. Who am I? Let me check my notes. I'm talking about a top 5, and I'm only giving 4. That's always a problem. We talked about Moomey. We talked about Sherman. The former trainer, Gary Johnson, who won something like 21 training titles in Ohio back in the day, who has become a very successful, especially live bankroll contest player. Gary won the contest we did He also won a big event at Treasure Island back in May and had a nice online score in July to cinch the 10 grand. He swore to me he wasn't going to chase the overall tour after he won at Santa Anita, but we'll see. After these big finishes in the first half, he might have no choice.
Interesting. It sounds like a good mix of newcomers and tournament veterans in there. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the year, certainly.
Absolutely, and that's kicking off this weekend. We have a contest on Sunday on nhcqualify.com. We've also got a contest on DRF Qualify on Sunday. That's the first opportunity for players to win their way into the October 17th and 18th Santa Anita Live Bank contest. On Saturday, we have action as well. On DRF Qualify, folks can win into the Gulfstream contest on September 19th. And one of my favorite formats in all of contest play going on over the course of the next 4 weeks at bcqualify.com. That's our two-stage qualifying format where folks have to finish in the top 10% of the round one contest to advance to round two, where once again, top 10% gets you a chance to win your full BCBC seat, which is worth $10,000 plus a travel allowance. I love that top 10% format because you don't have to have your miracle day. You can basically pick horses you like, regardless of what price they are, and have an excellent chance to have that consistency rewarded and have a chance to win a big prize without finishing in, say, the top 2% of a contest. I love it, and I encourage folks to check out bcqualify.com for Saturday. It's a great, great way to get involved in contest play.
It's funny, like Pete says, he loves that format. And my way of looking at it from a contest perspective is I think it's great that Pete loves it. Other people may not love it. That's not the point. The point is there are multiple ways to do it. Mm-hmm. There are different formats, and just because Pete loves it doesn't mean that you're going to love it, but right. It gives you you have more to pick from, right. More ways to figure out which way suits you best, whether you'd rather try to have one great day or two really good days. And the goal is just to make the format work for you as best you can based on what you perceive your own strengths and weaknesses to be.
Absolutely. It's all about options. That's the nice thing about it is based on how you play, it depends upon, you focus on these types of races, do you focus on these types of tournaments, and just the more options you have, the better chance you have of qualifying and taking down a big score at something like the BCBC or the NHC.
Yeah, and we were talking about ways to qualify. It's the very same thing with the tournaments themselves, right. Whether it's mythical $2 win place, live bankroll, some hybrid contest. We all know rightly or wrongly, we all know what we think we're better at. Right. And just as the contest world has grown in size, so have the options, like you say, and it's a nice thing for players to not just be able to play the contest, but play in a format that might suit them best.
Love it.
I agree completely, and that's something that I always say to people. Like, it's okay if you don't like this format, but I can pretty much guarantee you that there's some format out there that works for you. So rather than obsessing or overly focusing on what you don't like, spend that same mental energy finding the right contest. If folks have questions about what might be right for them, you can always reach out to me on Twitter @LoomsBoldly, through the comments of the blog. I've had these conversations with a lot of players where they'll tell me something about themselves and I'll say, you know what, I think the mythical games with the lower stakes will be great for you. Or perhaps, you know what, mythical money is probably not going to suit your style. Get into this live bankroll stuff. That's going to be better for you. Or some folks, it's all about getting the contest picks in at the beginning of the day and not changing them and turning it into a pure picking contest like in our all-in format. There are so many different ways of playing in contests. I can pretty much guarantee you there's one that's right for you. Just look around, feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to help you get on the road. Because as you guys know, I'm legitimately, not just because I work in contests for DRF, but I think it's this really exciting growth area of the game that players are doing themselves a disservice to not check out.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, before we dive into the stakes races, I wanted to mention you got called out a little this week. After our discussion on the Tuesday podcast, about American Pharoah. Is he going to show up at Saratoga or whatnot? Tell us a little bit about that, Pete.
Well, called out is one way of putting it. Caught in a maelstrom of silliness is another way of putting it. I think Mr. Zayat was maybe having a tough day because there was a lot of confusion. I guess it was misreported somewhere that the horse was definitely coming here. And then they were in the position of saying that that wasn't the case. But Zayat on Steve Bick's show, which is always a must listen, did say something to the effect of, Bob Baffert and how he trains, if the horse is doing well, he'll come here. And I said, maybe 5% of me was actually trolling a little bit here because I do want to see the horse so badly, where I said something like, I'll believe he's coming here when I hear Bob Baffert say that he's coming here, something like that, to which unfortunately Mr. Zayat, in the first response, took offense and said something like, are you calling me a liar? I've had enough for one day, something like that, to which I responded, no, I just really want to see the horse. I know Baffert's feelings about Saratoga, and I don't want to count my chickens about the horse coming here until, we hear definitively from Mr. Silverhair. Of course, I managed to compress this all into 140 characters. And then after seeing where my heart was and where I was coming from, he said, oh, no problem, have a nice day or something. It was, we ended it on a very nice note, but it was pretty hilarious getting into it with Mr. Zayat about the next stop for American Pharoah. We'll see. I'm still rather skeptical, but I believe me, there are many times at the racetrack where it's great to be wrong, where you want to see a certain horse do well for sentimental reasons that maybe you'd never bet on. This is an instance where definitively nothing would make me happier than to be wrong about my belief that we will not see American Pharoah at Saratoga this summer.
Well, I'm glad the story didn't end with you being blocked by Jazz 3162.
I haven't checked. It's possible he blocked me after the fact, but he was civil to my face.
You never know. And if Ahmed Zayat was having a bad week or a bad day earlier in the week, it certainly turned better with the news, I think, that broke yesterday, that the lawsuit that came out right around the Belmont has been dropped. So it goes from good to better for Mr. Zayat with both the American Pharoah's Triple Crown run, his Haskell win, and now this lawsuit being dropped. It's a term makes me think of the term that they used to use on 30 Rock when somebody was on a roll. They would call it Reaganing.
Well, I think it's clear that Peter was a central figure in turning turning Mr. Zayat's luck around.
That's
for
right.
The week.
That's right.
Absolutely. I expect to be thanked at the Eclipse Awards.
It started with you, Pete. All right. Well, let's look at the races. We got some really good ones. Great day at Saratoga. We're not even talking about the Del Mar races, which has the John C. Maybe, which is also a fantastic race. If there's any thoughts about that, maybe we can throw them out on Twitter. There's a couple I like in there. But we got 4 great races for Public Handicapper, all at Saratoga. They are not, unfortunately, connected in a pick 4, but they are connected in multiple running pick 3s. What's that?
Such a bummer that they're not a pick 4. I wanted the all-stakes pick 4 on these races.
I know. But what are you going to do? You can play rolling doubles, rolling pick 3s, and there's some good ones. It starts with race 7. It's the 12th running of the Fasig-Tipton de la Rose, $100,000 purse, 1 mile on the turf course for fillies and mares 4-year-olds and up that have not won a graded stakes in 2015. All right, we got a full field of 12. It's a really interesting race. I noted that there are actually 9 of the 12 horses have a new jock since the last race. Only 3 of them are keeping the same jock. So it's a little bit of musical chairs with jockeys here. But I think that just adds to the intrigue. So, Eric, you're the guest. Let's start with you. What do you think about this one?
I think it might be the toughest race of the 4 we're going to talk about. But, I certainly give a look to Nellie Cashman with the Forrest Boyce to Jose Ortiz jock move. And it's a real evenly matched field. you know, I can't sit here and say that horses like Receptor, or Jay Wonder, or Daring Cathy can't win. They all can. By the way, when I first looked at Daring Cathy's PPs, I thought its owner was Elton John, but actually I think it says Eaton John, which I take to mean John Eaton. But that has nothing to do with the handicapping of this race. No, you know, Daring Cathy's the speed. She's going to get pressed on the inside from Miss Frost. Chad Brown, so, you know, by law, she's going to have to be below 5-1, I suppose, even in this field. But she's just one of a few that I think are okay. The horse that really intrigues me most from a betting standpoint, and certainly if I were playing the public handicapper contest, is number 2, Tutti Paese, for the Bill Mott barn. He's got good numbers with Junior Alvarado. I'm sure Mike can probably expound on that. But when I look at Tutti Paese, you know, I see a horse that last year was running very competitively against the likes of Emollient and Wave Theory, who's a nice Martin Schwartz horse, and Discreet Mark, who of course is a Grade 1 winner. Took a little while to come around this winter, but the last race in February I thought was a good race. Closing despite being wide at Gulfstream behind a fairly modest pace, and dropping 6 pounds off the bench for this. I like these weight swings, especially in grass races. We'll probably hear more about my fondness for these weight swings as we continue on in the podcast. But to me, Tutti Paese at 15-1 for these connections with a horse, a mare of this ability with a good inside post. I think she's an excellent gamble, and that's where my money's going to be.
I like it, yeah, because I agree. This is a completely wide open race. I think you could probably make a case, looking through the field, I think you could make a case for every one of the 12 horses entered. Even the 30-1 joint return, trying turf for the first time, coming out of some Grade 1 stakes recently. You know, I think she's not even without a shot. So, Pete, what do you think? What's your take on this one?
I had 2 horses I was going to talk about, and Eric mentioned one of them already. Tutti Paese just looks like a horse rounding back into form for a white-hot barn whose form and figures are just not far from what it's going to take to make an impact here. I'm hoping the 15-1 morning line comes to fruition. For public handicapper, I'm torn between her and also a little bit Sassy, the number 4 horse for Michael Matz. Matt's another trainer I know, Mike, you have some positive stats on. But what I really like about a little bit Sassy is the fact that she did run her best race of her career up here in the Lake George on a day where she beat Daring Cathy. And just again, the form and figures are not far from what it's going to take. The running style, I think, is right to maybe get a first run type trip into all the speed, and maybe the closers take a little bit longer to get rolling. And this is one I believe could be all of the 20-1 that we see on the morning line. So I'm going to mess around with those 2. Not sure who I'm going to put on top in public handicapper. I'm just going to go ahead and put my public handicapper picks in today. I'm going to be picking between those 2. Maybe since Eric gave the good push to Tutti Paese, by default, I'll throw a little bit Sassy on top and try to get out of the race in multis with both of them as A's. I'll use some others defensively, but those are the 2 I really want to get paid if one of them wins.
I like it because I wanted to talk about 2 horses, and they're none of the ones that you guys talked about, although Eric, you did mention her briefly. But first I want to talk about Daring Cathy, who I think might very well be close to even money, or certainly less than 2-1 in this spot. She's 7 for 10 lifetime, won last out in her first start with Chad Brown, and her first start off a long layoff. These are the kind of horses, I think from a figure standpoint, she has the best last buyer. She probably has the top buyer in the field. She's the kind of horse that's going to take a ton of money. And I think, you know, obviously she is a legitimate threat, but she's won in a race this wide open that I want to try and beat. And I actually did a little bit of digging. Chad Brown, when he's had winners in turf routes coming off of a 180-day layoff or more, like Daring Cathy did last start, if they start again in a turf route without another subsequent layoff, he's only 1 for 10 the last 5 years. So those are the kinds of horses that I generally want to bet against. Ones like, I believe, who's going to be in the later race, Goldie Espany, did that, but then had another 45-day layoff. He sometimes needs to give them a little extra time, and if he wheels them back so quickly, that's my concern at a short price. So that said, I want to take a stab against her. I love, 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 love number 1, Miss Frost. And Pete, you mentioned the reason why you like Little Bit Sassy is her best race came at Saratoga on the turf. Miss Frost is 3 for 4 on the turf at Saratoga. She's 1 for 10 with only 1/3 in other races elsewhere. Combine that with the last 2 starts were ones she needed. Tom Albertrani is 8% first off the layoff in turf routes, 8% second off the layoff in turf routes, 3rd start off the layoff in turf routes, which is what she's doing here. 9 for 47, that's 19%, 273 ROI. Also note, in turf routes at Spa last 5 years, he's 7 for 89, but 3 of those 4, as we said, were Miss Frost. So he's 4 for 85 with other turf routers at Saratoga. This is one, she's getting back to her preferred surface. She's got the rail. She could be controlling speed, especially if the jockey on Daring Kathy, Javier Castellano, says, we got a 30-1 shot loose on the lead. I'm going to let her go. I could see a scenario where she never stops. I love, love, love. No disrespect to Junior Alvarado, who rode her last out, or Abel Castellano, who rode her 2 back. But I love the jockey switch to Ira Ortiz here, and I think she's going to be completely overlooked. And I'm hoping she just hangs on. I think a mile is perfect for her. Let's go.
I'd love her if Daring Kathy wasn't in here.
Fair. And I'm hoping they underestimate her and let her go a little. So we'll see.
I hear you. I mean, awesome. The horse at that price, why not find out?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with Pete on that. I mean, this isn't the kind of race where I could talk anybody off of any horse that he or she liked in this race. It's funny when you. I do think Miss Frost will be a big price despite the Saratoga record, because the first thing people are going to look at is, oh, Daring Kathy and Miss Frost raced against each other last time.
Yep.
Oh, Daring Kathy was 5-1 and Miss Frost was 28-1. And oh, they ran to their odds. Daring Kathy won and Miss Frost ran 9th. So you're going for a big turning of the tables here, and you should get paid if it comes to fruition.
Well, and if you watch that race too, Miss Frost broke a little slowly. She was sitting for about, even though the first call has her first by a head, she didn't immediately go to the lead. Daring Kathy went to the lead. Miss Frost was 4th or 5th early and eventually pulled her way up to the lead before tiring late. And those are the kinds of things that you wouldn't see unless you actually watch the race. I think with the rail, she's going to get, if she gets a good break, she could be forwardly placed. She could cut the corner, and let's just hope she holds on late. I think a 2-turn mile hits her square between the eyes. I'm not sure she wanted the 1-turn mile last out at Belmont. Certainly it was a race she probably needed in the second start off a long layoff, and get back to her best surface. And she was also facing tougher in some of those races. She's just one I'm really looking forward to playing. I also like number 11, Ticking Katie, a little bit, mostly just based on Brian Lynch's stats at both Saratoga and at NYRA in general. He's 8 for 32 with a 390 ROI in turf routes at NYRA tracks in the last 5 years. So he's one I never discount. Fun race, though. Absolutely fun race. All right, let's move on to the 8th race. It's the Grade 1 Test Stakes. It's 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-old fillies. Another really, really interesting one. A lot of different ways you can go in here. And it, of course, features the return of the 2-year-old champ, Take Charge Brandy, coming off of a layoff of about 7 months or so. But it's a relatively full field of 10 fillies, assuming we don't have any scratch. It's a good one. A lot of different ways you can go. Some cutting back, some pure sprinters, and that's why I don't necessarily want to take a short price in this one either. Pete, where did you land in the test stakes?
I think that So You Say is going to just get an absolutely great trip here. I'm not sure if Take Charge Brandy is who she once was with all that she's been through, and I don't see a ton of other pace in here. I could see So You Say just sitting right off that rival, and she's fast and she's ready to step up into this competition. I feel like she's been brought along slowly, and the figures to me and the trip she's going to get say she's a very, very interesting one in this spot. I don't think the price is going to be huge. I don't think we'll see even the 5-1 of the morning line, though if we did, wouldn't that be great? And then I've got a couple others in here. Just actually, that it reminds me of the very first time we ever did the Players Podcast. You, me, and Matt Bernier. It was back on October 2nd or 3rd, approximately, before the Frisette, and we started things off with a bang, giving out that exacta of By the Moon and Wonder Gal on that show. And I've followed both of them with interest ever since. I'm going to definitely use By the Moon here, and I'll probably throw in Wonder Gal as well, just because she's one I've always liked, and I think she's got some excuses from some of those from some of her recent races. She doesn't always get the easiest of trips, Wonder Gal. Part of that has to do with her size, though. They're just ones that I follow who, if their prices, I'll be including. But I think my strongest A in the race is number 7, So You Say.
I like it. Yeah, she could very well be controlling speed. We'll see. You know, and she's done little wrong. Certainly sprinting since she's joined the Michelle Nevin barn. So that's a good one. What do you think about the race, Eric?
Yeah, none of these horses do too much for me, Mike, except for cavorting. And I know she's the 3-1 favorite, but she looks like the kind of favorite to me that people are going to try to poke holes in or look for alternatives to. If you take a negative viewpoint of So You Say and say, well, she ran and she might be controlling speed, but she needed a clear lead to win a one other than, and she got a nice buyer doing it. But again, it's a clear lead that maybe she won't get against these kind of horses. Plus, she's stretching out. If you discount that last gaudy win a little bit, you're left with cavorting being about 10 buyer points faster than the rest of the field. Good trainer, good connections, well bred. Stone Street, given the menu of 4 races, I guess in the late pick 4 at Saratoga, this is going to be leg 1 of the 8, 9, 10, 11 pick 4. This is a race where I'm going to be in a position where I think cavorting is going to be my single, and I'm going to try to get through the race with her and spread a little on the other legs. But it's a case with me that if cavorting doesn't win, I don't know who is.
Well, I'll tell you.
You tell me.
Because there's a horse in here I love. And like the last race, it's the rail filly. It's number 1, Irish Jasper. She's 6 for 7, sprinting on the dirt. 5 of those wins came at different tracks, so I'm not concerned about her never running at Saratoga. She's always a little overlooked in the wagering. She's always live. I think part of it is, Derek Ryan horses aren't necessarily going to get the attention that Kieran McLaughlin might, or even Michelle Nevin might at Saratoga. Gets Javier Castellano, gets what I think will be a good setup. This is an improving filly that seems to want 7 furlongs. Some of these either seem to be better, perhaps a little bit shorter, and many of the ones, especially some of the more legitimate favorites, seem to want longer than 7 furlongs. Obviously, Take Charge Brandy is cutting back. Angela Renee is cutting back. Even Bar of Gold, who I think is a little live at 15-1. If you get that at the morning line, you can certainly excuse those last 2 efforts. A 7 furlong distance for Bar of Gold, I think, fits really well. I look at it as who is going to take to the 7 furlong distance and who's going to get a good trip. And I land squarely on Irish Jasper, who I should mention, her race 2 back in the Miss Preakness had 4 next out winners, including herself in the victory ride We also had Huasca in the Tangelo, Windy Forecast in the Pleasanton Oaks, and Super Sacks, the speedball for Dwayne Lucas, won a turf sprint allowance race at Churchill. It was a good race, and I think she could be a little overlooked in here.
Yeah, that's
All
very
right.
sensible. Very sensible case on Irish Jasper. I don't love the rail at 7, but if things trip out right, she's tough, and you're probably right. She probably will be a square price once again. I think it's a sensible way to go. And I mean, I don't disagree with Eric's case on cavorting. I think if they all run their best race, cavorting wins. I'm just not thrilled with some of the flops and with all the layoff lines. And I just feel like she's one I would hesitate to trust as a single personally,
Right.
but certainly couldn't blame anybody who included.
Right. Yeah, and that was my take on cavorting too. Is she's very logical, and if she runs her best race, she could very well be your most likely winner. I just don't know if I can trust her, you know, and I don't know if 7 is the best distance for her either.
Right. I mean, you know, these are the things you weigh with every race, with every horse in every race.
Mm-hmm.
I just, you know, I think a horse like Irish Jasper is going to be well suited by the distance. I'm just not sure she's good enough to beat cavorting if cavorting's going to run well. And, you know, I find my policy at Saratoga is to tend to trust Kieran McLaughlin to have his horses run well rather than to think they're going to run poorly.
Appreciate that. I just, you know, you might be right that people try and poke holes in her. I was just afraid she might be off that big buyer last
look,
night. Might
if
be
she's
a big favorite.
Yeah, like you said, who's it? Daring Cathy in the De La Rose has had the buyer edge. Well, yeah, by like 2 points. Her edge is significant,
Considerable.
and if she does tip too far below, 9-5 or something like this, I'm going to lose interest. But and in terms of a pick 4 single, I think, this is the kind of horse that isn't a lock, but it sort of makes sense as a single. But we'll see.
I have a few negative stats about some of the horses. Take Charge Brandy. Dwayne Lucas is 1 for 31 with only 4 others to hit the board. Last 5 years, horses returning off a layoff of 180 days or more. The concern I have about Bar of Gold cutting back is John Kimmel's only 3 for 68 with a 71-cent ROI going route to sprint on dirt the past 5 years. And similar concern about Wonder Gal cutting back. Leah Dramati 4 for 56, 91-cent ROI with that move. So that's partly why I wanted to take a stab against some of these shorter prices. I also don't love Angela Renee. Tried dirt last out, now cutting back. Tried turf last out, now cutting back, going back to the dirt. To me, this seems a little bit of a case where Todd Pletcher's kind of throwing up his hands and saying, what do we have here? Can we get her back to her glory days, which came at this point almost a year ago? So,
yeah, I mean, I do respect Angela Renee, and I don't think Pletcher would enter her if he was still in throw up your hands mode in a race like the Test. I do hope Take Charge Brandy takes all kinds of money. To my way of thinking, her PP lines look gaudy with the Breeders' Cup juvenile fillies win in there, and all the other stakes, the Starlet, Delta Princess. She's never run fast enough to win this race.
right.
So she's got to giddy up compared to what she's done in the past. And I know she's older and perhaps capable of doing it, but it's a lot to ask off the bench.
It is.
She's had those physical issues, too.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. All right, well, let's move on to the biggie, the main event for tomorrow. And our buddy Matt Bernier actually looked at it and said, I think this is a preview of the Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, I'm talking about the Grade 1 Whitney. It's a 1 1/8 on the dirt, $1.25 million for 3-year-olds and upward. Fantastic race. We'll start with you, Eric. I'm not going to lead off this week. I'll just chime in. That's my choice as the host. I'm not gonna start things, but I'm gonna put you guys on the spot.
Okay, I'll start with a couple of slight tangents. One just to point out, as Mike has mentioned off camera, that Coach Inge is a reported potential scratch by
Right.
David Grenning. So Don't put a whole lot of mental energy into breaking down Coach Inge's PPs.
Right.
The other thing I'm going to say, it's just a slight editorial, but I think a little bit of credit here for what is an outstanding horse race should go to Martin Panza, the racing secretary at the New York Racing Association. And the reason why I say that is heading into his first Saratoga, Panza took a little bit of, shall we say, guff, both internally and externally, over his decision to put extra money in the Whitney purse. Last year, I believe it was more rich than the Travers purse, which some dyed-in-the-wool traditionalists did not like. He stuck by his guns. They actually bumped the Travers up, I think, to mollify the traditionalists. But, you know, these divisions are not all alike, and some require more money to recruit top horses than others do, and I think the older horses are an example of that. Panza realized it. He did what he thought was right, and I think we're seeing the fruits of that here in the 2015 Whitney. All right, so enough of that.
Great
You're right.
That's awesome.
You're absolutely right, because even with the scratch of Coach Inge, we've got 9 legitimate horses, and there's a lot of different ways you can go.
Yeah. I give full marks to the defending champion Moreno. I think he could easily repeat, and I think, you know, in case anybody doesn't know, there was no shame in that Gold Cup. I nearly call it the Hollywood Gold Cup. There's no shame in that Gold Cup loss in my mind at Santa Anita, with the hot pace that Hard Aces and Opportunity both closed into. Catch a Flight was a little bit near the pace and came back to win nicely in the San Diego handicap at Del Mar. I think that that race is going to prove to be live for any horses that were sort of on or near the early lead that day. Moreno fits. Having said that, and this is not to diminish the likes of Honor Code, who I'm a big fan of, or Tonalist, Noblebird Lee. To me, the horse that could be better than all of them is Liam's Map. And he's one of a couple who haven't won a graded stakes race, so he's making a big jump. But
you're getting weight because of it.
You're getting weight. You know, I like to get weight. You're getting 7 pounds on a horse that ran a 106 buyer last time, carrying 124, beating the perfectly respectable Confrontation, who was second to Tonalist in the Westchester. Before that, in December, ran a 112 from the very difficult number 7 post position, going a mile and a 16th at Gulfstream. This horse just has a lot of octane, period. He might just be faster than these. He's 6-1. The other thing I thought, a couple of quick things. One, all right, who are Pletcher's main guys? Velasquez and Castellano. All right, they have other mounts. So if Pletcher didn't really like this horse that much, he'd probably go to Joe Bravo or some, you know, whoever's third on his list. No, he reaches out for Mike Smith. And then lastly, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm going to assume it's a good thing. Look at these works on Liam's Map. Right. Especially, when's the last time you saw a Pletcher horse going into a mile and, you know, a 2-turn race working 58-3?
58-2.
58-2. Thank you. The eyes, the peepers aren't what they used to be.
Yeah,
he either worked too fast or this horse is just sitting on go.
I was just going to mention, when I mentioned Liam's Map, I was also thinking in terms of Noble Bird as well, because he's been working quite fast since his win last out in the Stephen Foster. I'm really eager to see the Clocker report when it comes out later today, particularly to see what they say about Liam's Map's works, as well as Noble Bird's works, as well as the rest of the field too. You know, I think Lee was working pretty forwardly as well from his second place finish to Noble Bird last out. So some of my comments here may be changed when I see that Clocker report come out later today. Pete, all right, what is your thought about the Whitney, aside from it being just a fantastic betting race?
Yeah, it's just one of the most fun races to handicap I've seen in a long time. And I'm going to take the view that I'm going to use my own sort of subjective assessment of how good these horses are to try to help me find the winner here. And with that in mind, the two horses that all year I've seen as the grade 1 best horses, I think they're both going to get terrific setups here. And I want to talk about both of them, and then I want to throw in a long shot as well, who I'll be using. The two horses I'm talking about are Tonalist and Lee, both of whom I think have big excuses from a flow standpoint and bias standpoint last time. I'll start with Tonalist. We had a little bit of a disagreement on the pod after Tonalist's last race.
That's right. Pete is having his technical difficulties right now. Yeah, I know Matt and Pete had a pretty strong disagreement about Tonalist last race. Pete. Yeah.
Well, Matt was kind of disgusted with Tonalist, and like,
yeah.
I thought, to my mind, maybe just giving up on him too quick, whereas I thought he had a very, very clear excuse of moving way too fast and too wide and between horses into a hot pace. John Velasquez himself did a mea culpa after the race, and I said to Matt on that show, I wish we had the clip of it, I promise you he's better than this. Mm-hmm. And I think this race, with the way this pace shapes up, I mean, Eric points out 3 very live speed horses in this race between Liam's Map and Moreno and Noble Bird. So I think it's, no excuses time for Tonalist. Folks have said, oh, he doesn't do his best work at Saratoga. I think that's premature. I mean, I was in the paddock before the Travers last year, and he was all lit up and just not himself. I don't think that was a representative effort. The previous race of his from Saratoga, the People Dog, the Jim Dandy, I didn't think he was fully fit. I thought they clearly were using that as a prep, and it just, for whatever reason, the horse got lit up Travers Day, and it didn't work out. I think this is a chance to see the real Tonalist stand up. I'm not going to leave out Lee as an A in my multis, though, simply because I felt like on that very obviously speed bias track on Stephen Foster Day, coming from far back and almost getting there, I just thought he ran a winning race and a really good race coming into this, should get a much better setup and hopefully have a chance.
Yeah, I think Lee is a legitimate player. I think actually the top 3, I would be surprised if Noble Bird didn't float up from the 5-1 morning line. But I think the top 3 of Honor Code, Tonalist, and Lee are all going to take a lot of money. And I think potentially all 3 could be lower odds than their 3-1, 4-1, and 9-2 morning lines respectively. So for that reason alone, I'm looking for an alternative in a race where I can see so many different logical live horses. And I have questions about each of those 3. Honor Code, I'm not sure he wants to go 2 turns. I'm not sure he wants to go, he might be best with the 1-turn mile.
And the other thing, too, not to interrupt your...
No, that's fine. Please do.
I agree with you that there's a question about him at 2 turns. The other thing is this horse has got a lot of Stormcat in him. Yeah. He seems to, be very fussy. Mm-hmm. We saw the race at Churchill when Javier Castellano was whipping him just to try to get him interested in running.
On the back stretch.
And you saw, you must have seen Welch and Grenning report earlier this week that one of his last work prior to today's blowout, they took him to Oklahoma, and the horse just refused to move. And then it wasn't until they got him to the main track at Saratoga that he would engage in a proper workout. So
yeah,
it's not Shug's fault. It's not anybody's fault. But he's got that Stormcat blood in him, which can make him a little nuts sometimes. So there's that too with Honor Code.
Absolutely,
keep going.
Hard to trust at a short price. Tonalist, I think, is absolutely logical. The concern I have with him is I don't know if 9 furlongs is his best distance. I think he might actually be better going longer. Of course, he's gotten good. He won the Peter Pan at 9 furlongs. I don't know if he was facing really the kind of horse he's going to be facing here. He won the Westchester at a flat mile, 1-turn mile at Belmont. He was beating 3 other horses. Nothing like he's facing here. The losses that he's had, at Saratoga came in the Jim Dandy, 2 wicked strong at 9 furlongs. I think he's better at 10 and up. Certainly he won the Belmont. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He had a fine run from being a little too far out of it early in the Breeders' Cup. He just missed last out against Phoenix, like you said, Pete, moved a little too soon. I think he's just a grinder that is going to want every inch of 10 furlongs. And at a short price at 9 furlongs, he's another I want to take a stab against.
My counter argument to that, Mike, would just be about how pace can change those dynamics. And I agree, he does tend to grind a little bit. And maybe in a paceless race at 9 furlongs, I would be right there. I don't know if I'd be right there with you, but I'd understand that point of view a little more. I feel like the early pace of this race could bring that stamina into play. But I mean, I respect where you're coming from. I just wanted to add that note about the pace.
No, it's fair. And you know, if we're talking twice the morning line, you know, he's absolutely logical. Just, I think he's going to come down from that 4-1. I think he may end up even being your favorite if people have the same concerns that I have about Honor Code and can forgive the loss to Honor Code in the Met Mile, which I think you probably could. I'm just concerned at price more than anything. But if I'm looking, look, you know, I had some crazy prices in the earlier legs. I certainly wouldn't leave them off my tickets if Miss Frost and Iris Jasper win. I don't want to you know, cut off my nose to spite my face by throwing Honor Code or Tonalist or Lee off of my ticket and miss the pick 3. That said, there are a few horses I love in here. I'm with you on Liam's map. I think he's an improving horse that should be fine at the 9 furlongs and could even be controlling speed in this race. I'm not concerned about Mike Smith. Obviously, the last 5 years, Todd Pletcher and Mike Smith, they're 2 for 10 in Grade 1s on dirt, and those 2 wins were huge prices. Palace Malice in the Belmont, Princess of Silmar in the Oaks. He's a big rider. Sure, he's not Javier or Johnny V. First call for Pletcher, but Mike Smith is no third tier jock for Pletcher. But I really like the Jimmy Jerkins runners, not just because both have done their best work at Saratoga, but I think Wicked Strong in particular, especially if, I don't know if he's going to be 20-1 on the morning line. I think he comes down from that. He's a horse that I think since that issue in the incident in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, needed some time off, came back. I think 9 furlongs is exactly what he wants. Came back at a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream. He ran fine. I don't think he really needed to win that race. I don't think that was his best distance. I don't think that's what he wanted. Next out in the Excelsior, he ran into a couple good horses that have run some good races in multiple different surfaces since, in FNX and Red Rifle. Again, another race I'm not sure he needed to win. Move forward off of that, he had tons of trouble in the Met Mile, which again, not really his best distance in a 1-turn mile. They send him to the turf just to figure out, is he a good horse still? He runs a fine effort behind King Creasa, who is loose on a lead there. Comes back. Jimmy says, all right, some good work since. Keeping the faith. Let's send him to the Whitney. Jimmy, turf to dirt, last 2 years in routes. 6 for 15, 441 ROI. You know, he did it last year with VE Day in the Curlin. This is another one. If the Clocker report says he's working great, I think he's going to get a very good setup in a race where he loves this track. He probably should have won the Travers. He should be 2 for 2 on the surface. I think he's rounding back into form. I'm just hoping to get 10 or 12-1. I'd be happy with even half of that morning line.
He was the other one I was going to mention.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with your case on him. I think he's extremely live. He has, and I kind of feel like if you like Tonalist on form handicapping, you got to look at Wicked Strong at a multiple of the price, given that he ran better than Tonalist twice on this track last year. No, I think he's extremely interesting at a price and will be on my tickets for sure.
Is it fair to say that everybody's pretty live except for Normandy Invasion in this race?
Well, perhaps. You know, I mean, I appreciate your respect for Moreno. I'm just not sure he's going to get the pace setup that he needs to run his best races.
What do you think he needs, like a slow pace?
I think he needs to be lone speed.
See, I don't. And I think he did last year, but I don't think he does any longer. So I find that when part of why I like
one this year.
He did.
Part of why he seems like a different horse in that respect, which I take, to be a good thing. He's gotten a little more professional, and it's part of why part of me can see Liam's map just wiring the field with Moreno perhaps content to sit off him, with Noble Bird looking for a similar type trip as he had in the last two, with Bridge Mahan sort of nursing him along while the horse climbs away there. But anyway, it's a great race.
Well, it is.
We could talk another half hour on this race if we wanted.
We could. My concern with Moreno is, even though he's stalked and won this year, he's facing much better horses than an Imperative.
This is the grade 1+ level.
Yes, absolutely,
absolutely. There's grade 1s and then there's grade 1s, and I think he comes up short for class against this group.
Right.
This isn't just will take charge here that he's going to have to face at the grade 1 level at Saratoga. This is a field of beasts, and if he does it, God bless him. What a cool horse, but he's an X for me.
Right. Yeah, and
he's an X. Interesting.
Noble Bird is another one that, if he continues to improve, he's absolutely logical in this case. I just wonder if he will. That was a pretty rough, tough effort last time. I'm just concerned about a potential regression, partly because I did the trainer stats. Mark Casse, 0 for 11 with only 2 in the money finishes in dirt grade 1 stakes with last out winners. I'm just afraid that effort might have taken a little much out of him. He's probably going to have to move forward off of that, and he'll probably be a little more than the 5-1, but at single digits, he's one that I'm just not sure I can trust.
Who are you talking about? Noble Bird?
Noble Bird.
Oh, I like Noble Bird a lot. I bet him in the Stephen Foster.
I did too. But
tipped him on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But he was getting getting weight from Lee that day. He's not now.
Oh yeah, and I loved his Ali Sheba. But as well as he ran in the Stephen Foster, he may have to run a little bit better than that. And he's picking up the 8 pounds, not to belabor the weight thing. But I'll just say one more sentence and shut up. But on this race, but just Moreno at 1 1/8 is a lot better than Moreno at 1 1/4, and he might be a horse to have on the periphery of your pick 4s and tries and supers.
I'm not sure he'd be an X for me. He might be a C though. I don't know if I can count on him. He'll be a big price. He
never off the board at the Spa. Yep.
Yeah,
Keep going.
At the same time, I'm saying he's an X for me. I wouldn't say I'm not saying, oh, you're crazy. I understand the case, and you make a good case. And it's just that kind of race for me. I mean, especially since I'm gravitating towards 2 runners who are at the lower end of the price spectrum. It's not going to behoove me to be too inclusive in a race like this.
Right.
I got to try to take a stand if I'm going to make any money. But I don't think it's nuts. It's just not for me.
Yeah. No, fair point. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I don't want to give short shrift to the 10th race, which is the Grade 3 Waya Stakes, the Fasig-Tipton Waya Stakes. Waya. Thank you. It's the kind of race that I love. It's 1.5 miles, 12 full furlongs on the turf, on the inner turf for 3-year-olds and older fillies and mares. Again, we've got a nice full field. We've got 12 runners signed up. Of course, it wouldn't be a graded stakes turf route at Saratoga if we didn't have 3 from Chad Brown at least, and 2 from Graham Motion. And of course, a couple even from Jonathan Shepard, who saddles last year's winner, Cat's Claw, in this race. Another wide open one. Pete, let's start with you. Where did you land in the whale?
I like number 11, Kitten's Point, based on her body of work and her versatility. I'm hoping that even though that turn comes up pretty quick, that Prado can negotiate the turn from the difficult outside post. I think she's really good, and I'm hoping with all the different things going on here, betting market wise, that she's going to be at least the 6-1 of the morning line. I'm not interested in her at a short price, but I think at a little bit north of 6-1, she's one that I'm okay focusing on in a race, like you say, is wide open.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I hope this race stays together too. I hope we don't have any scratches out of here, because it should be interesting. It should be interesting to see where the money goes too, because you're right. The favorite is 5-1 on the morning line, but I think 4-1 on the morning line, Queen's Parade. I think in real Danza Cavallo 3-1. I think in real wagering though, that's gonna change up a little, and I think you might have a relatively short price favorite that I'm willing to play against. Eric, what's your thought?
Last year's Weah wasn't a very great field, but and Cat's Claw won, dropping 7 pounds from an allowance win, stretching out, or not stretching out, staying at the same distance. I'm going to look for a horse that might be getting some weight off. Interesting to note, it's a grade 3 this year for the first time.
Right.
There are 3 horses that interest me, or I think are worth mentioning. Stuck on the far outside there, Danza Cavallo. 3-1. It's worth noting this is a legitimate grade 1 horse, and these other horses, I think you might struggle to call them grade 3s. I mean, these horses coming out of the dick don't really get me too excited. Whereas Danza Cavallo ran a perfectly respectable race in the grade 1 Gamely at Santa Anita behind Hard Not to Like, who of course came back to validate or frank that form in the grade 1 Diana, which she also won. Right. The other 2, though, she is stuck outside, and I guess Chad Brown maybe just put her in this race because she can go long, and he had Stephanie's Kitten for the Diana and some others, so he's got to keep his charges apart, perhaps. But the 2 that were interesting to me were the 6, Nice Number, and the 8, White Rose. Nice Number, Brad Cox, does great at Saratoga, especially going long on grass.
That's right. 3 for 7 with big ROI.
Thank you. 88 buyer last time, getting shuffled back behind a fairly modest pace, is losing 6 pounds today. Beautiful turf breeding with Pioneer of the Nile out of a Sadler's Wells mare. That last race came at 1.5 miles. I just don't see why this horse is 30-1 on the morning line. I'll take half of that, thank you. And then White Rose, who, you know, may look like she's a little bit off form, but she's a bona fide 1.5 mile kind of horse. She likes Saratoga. She won there back in 2013. And this race against Goldie Espani, in the River Memories, it was a really slow pace. She made up ground late, finished just a nose behind Granny Mac's Kitten, who came back to win a couple days ago at Saratoga nicely. And she's getting a 10-pound weight shift between her and Goldie Esponi. So I think that 10-pound swing is plenty to make up the 2.5 length difference, especially if she gets a more reasonable pace. So it's 6-8-12 for me in the Weah, with perhaps a slight preference to White Rose, number 8.
I love it. I love it. You know, and for me, the race kind of goes through Goldie Esponi. Just because I see her from the rail potentially controlling speed. But you're right, at a short price, and she may even come down from this 5-1. I don't know if I can trust her, especially considering that weight swing, especially considering she really got a walking lead, 117-4. Wow. You know, if you don't win setting those kinds of fractions,
better have a big excuse.
Better have a big excuse. So I'm with you. I want to take a shot in here. Brad Cox at Saratoga is, like you said, you can't underestimate him at all. So it was really interesting to see this one show up in this race. There's a horse in here who I've mentioned, I think, on the podcast. I've written about and bet this, not that. I might even be married to at this point. I was crying in my beer when she was disqualified last out because it cost me a few dollars.
Your favorite horse. I know what you're talking
Number
about.
3, evidently. I don't know if she's good enough. I don't know if she wants the 1.5 miles. The price is interesting. She's an improving horse. I don't even know if I'm going to pick her here. She does get a little bit of weight. She can't seem to get a regular rider. She's almost always overlooked. She's always interesting to me. Trouble is, she's probably going to be a little bit out of it early, and if they walk on the front end, I just don't know if she's good enough to really rally against some, like you said, we've got a field of some legitimate graded stakes runners. The one that interests me a little bit at what I'm hoping is a relatively square price is the other Graham Motion, coming out of the Grade 2 New York last out, where she went a little wide. She's one that I think might improve at the 10 furlongs, and Graham's numbers.
Talking about Eastern Bell?
Yeah, number 2 Eastern Bell. Graham's numbers, 10 furlongs or longer in graded stakes, which applies to Kitten's Point, of course, as well. 10 for 36, 562 ROI last 5 years. She's one that I'm really, really interested in, but I probably would want at least that 6-to-1 morning line, and maybe sprinkle in a little bit of evidently and nice number at a price, because I think she will be nice number.
I like all of that. Can you believe evidently hasn't even won $100,000 yet? It seems like she's had a pretty good career. She's just stuck on 77,000. I just found that was funny when I saw that.
She would have had she actually been left up in that last race. But yeah, fair point. Fair point.
And Roy Lerman, the trainer there, a certified member of the bomb squad in the old days up here at Saratoga.
Oh yeah, and he's one that I think kind of sneakily points to Saratoga and brings in these ones that maybe on paper don't look fast enough. But
you could look at evidently and say, there's a shot she's been wanting to go long all along.
Yeah.
And she finally went 1.25 miles last time and won with a comment of burst through.
Oh yeah, she was by far the best. I mean, regardless of whether or not she fouled another horse, she was by far the best in that race.
And if 1.25 miles is good, then 1.5 miles might be better for her. So I don't throw her out whatsoever.
Right. On the improve, it does get a little bit of weight from some of her rivals, and probably will.
I plan on using every horse we discussed in this segment. The only one I'm worried about just for price is Danza Cavallo, but I think that a lot of good cases here, and a lot of horses I had letter grades next to already.
Yeah, Danza Cavallo, I'm afraid from that outside post, if there are no scratches and at a short price, yeah, but she's absolutely logical, absolutely. All right, anything else, gentlemen, before we wrap it and call it a podcast for this Friday?
No, I can't wait for the racing to start. There's 3 big guarantees at Saratoga. There's a $400,000 guaranteed pick 5 Saturday, a $250,000 guaranteed pick 6 on Saturday, and a $750,000 guaranteed late pick 4 on Saturday. So, and good races to have those pots monies directed to. So, gosh, it's another great Saturday of racing.
I love it. And Pete?
May you win all your photos.